Well, Dakorien Moore is a big get for the Ducks, and he is going to make an instant impact in 2025.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you have not already, you can like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Please and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So, Dakorien Moore was the big news over the weekend. It was a little bit of a surprise, though not entirely. I knew Oregon had a chance. I still thought at some level, perhaps I just blocked it into my mind, it was going to be Texas, and for Oregon to go get the number 3 player in the class, the number 1 wide receiver, and their highest rated recruit of all time, that's just not a small thing. And so when you look at how Oregon's offense is going to shake out in 2025, I can't see a way that he is not making an impact, if not an outright starter. We are seeing true freshman wide receivers across the country come into big-time programs and make an impact. We're going to see that on October 12th with Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. You talk about Ryan Williams down at Alabama, Cam Coleman down at Auburn. These 5-star plus guys on the whole that are among the highest rated recruits, not just at their position, but in the entire class, they are going to big-time programs and they're making an impact right away. And Dakorien Moore is a big deal because he's going to have that opportunity, and I think he is going to be a starting receiver for the Ducks next year. Their receiving core is bound to lose at least 2 of its top 4 guys this season, and that number could be 4 of the top 4 guys. Evan Stewart and Gary Bryant Jr. will have a decision to make. Of the 2, Gary would be the most likely to return, or the more likely, I guess I should say. I don't know if he's going to come back, what his NFL prospects would be, if he would transfer, to go somewhere else for his final year of eligibility, but he's got a red shirt, he's got a COVID, so he has another year in 2025 if he wants it. Evan Stewart, meanwhile, the Texas A&M transfer, is expected to go to the NFL after the season. Now, that is contingent upon him having a great year. I mean, he could be a good draft prospect regardless. If, though, let's say he battles injuries in a couple games and, doesn't ever fully establish a rhythm, he could, just hypothetically, not speaking that into existence, goodness gracious, no. His playmaking potential is so high. But if he ends the year, around 600-700 yards, he might decide, no, I want to put a full healthy season together in an offense like this with a great quarterback, and it'll be Dante Moore or Austin Novosad in 2025. And if he doesn't have the breakout season this year, well, he could decide to come back. In the event that both of those guys depart and Trayshawn Holden and Tez Johnson are both out of eligibility, I almost said Evan Stewart, but I did not. Dakorien Moore comes in and starts in place of Evan Stewart. He's only 5'11". I could see him going and being a starting slot receiver. You can put him on the outside. That's what Oregon is going to do with Evan Stewart this season. And sure, you'd like to have a big-bodied guy out there, but Jurion Dickey is a little bit taller. Kyler Casper has got a 6'5", 6'6" frame. Maybe he works himself into the fold as a starting X-receiver next year. I think there is a lot of positional versatility, but any way you slice it, at the very least, if Evan Stewart comes back, I think Dakorien Moore is your number 1 guy in the slot. He's not the biggest dude. He's a couple inches taller than Tez Johnson, but Dakorien Moore can step in, and he is ready to play right away. And that's what makes him such a fun and exciting prospect to get hyped about. I think another good comparison that I haven't heard anybody throw out is Zachariah Branch at USC, another guy who, as a true freshman last year, made an impact in the offense. I don't know if he was their leading receiver or not. He oftentimes was. But just dynamically, with his athletic ability, he's someone that comes in and makes an impact immediately as a true freshman. And I fully expect Dakorien Moore to have that opportunity and to have that sort of potential. The reason I liken him to Evan Stewart or Tez Johnson a little bit is They are among the best pure route runners, which, as Kirk Herbstreit's voice said on the NCAA 14 video game, is an underrated quality in receivers. And the new NCAA football video game, well, EA College Football 25, is coming out not very far from now. I'm excited. Anyway, that is the quality I think that separates him apart. Yeah, he's great after the catch. He's got high-end speed. He's got really good hands. But it's his ability to separate and to have that translate over directly to the college game at the highest level that I think is going to allow him to play early in his career. You think about a guy like Troy Franklin, for instance. I think he became more refined as a route runner. When you talk about what makes Troy Franklin an NFL caliber receiver and why he just had the best year in Oregon receiving history by the numbers, I mean, second all time in receptions and first in yards and first in touchdowns. I don't think of him as, oh my gosh, he was this unbelievable route runner. He had elite speed. He was great with contested catches. And he's someone who was really prolific in yards after the catch, but he's just a constant deep threat. He was the deep threat on this past year's receiving core. So not to say that he isn't a good or capable route runner, but these guys are high level. Like I think all three, Dakorien and Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart, I think all of them are better pure route runners. Not necessarily going to have better overall seasons than Troy Franklin, but I think they're better, more explosive and precise route runners than what Troy Franklin brought to the table. And he, of course, brought a lot. And this position group has just been revitalized. In not even revitalized, I think it has been elevated in a way that we have not seen in the modern era of Oregon football. You have a fourth round receiver. You're going to have a second round receiver. And if Dakorien Moore clicks at Oregon, if it all really starts to hit, then guess what? He's going to be an early round NFL draft selection too, because he can be that sort of guy. That's the sort of athleticism that he brings to the table. And I don't think Oregon has had an instant impact true freshman on the perimeter. I'm trying to think in my head. I mean, I don't count running backs as on the perimeter because Royce Freeman and Thomas Tyner were both really good as true freshmen, if memory serves. And I mean, I'm going back to on the perimeter, DeAnthony Thomas as a guy who in the receiving game and maybe even in the kick return game as well steps in and immediately is, a guy that you have to get the football to. You just do, because he's that sort of playmaker. And it is no small thing to be even slightly higher rated in your composite score than Kayvon Thibodeau, who came in and made a big impact as a true freshman, but that was by the end of the year. By the end of the year, he was a big impact guy. He was a rotational guy earlier in the year. I think that's because he was in the trenches. When you're on the perimeter, if you've got it and if you're healthy, you can come in and start and play right away. And I think he's absolutely going to do that and headline what will be another great receiving core. You look at the way Oregon recruited that position in 2024, what they're doing in 2025. They've got Dallas Wilson. They've got Isaiah Mosey. They've got Cooper Perry, the number one receiver in the states of Florida, Missouri, and Arizona in the same class. 2 5-star guys. Oregon's never done that before at the receiver position. Yeah, Junior Adams is on an absolute heater right now, which begs the question, is he destined to be an offensive coordinator here or somewhere else one day? I'll talk about that next. First, let's talk about Game Time, which is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. So take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hope you're having a great day. I didn't have anything else to say. Just wanted to wish you all a great day. Mailbag time. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext, free 14-day trial. That link in the description below, wherever you listen to or watch this show. This from David. Here's a future question for you. In the likely event that Will Stein takes a head coaching gig, do the Ducks elevate from within, or does Dan go to his trusted list of coaches he's been compiling since he was, 12 years old? He has spoken in the past about his Rolodex of coaches that he's got when there is an opening. So this question is particularly appropriate to answer in light of the Dakorien Moore commitment, because as I mentioned earlier in the show, Junior Adams has completely changed the recruiting at this position. I think it has elevated more than any position group that we have ever seen. Cristobal redid it with offensive linemen. And frankly, there were a lot of developmental guys that weren't highly touted prospects. But then there was a Penei Sewell in there. You know, he had Kelvin Banks before he left for Miami, and Banks has gone on to have a good career at Texas. I believe he's starting along the offensive line this year. You know, Kingsley Suamatia was there for about an hour and such. He, I think, got drafted in the NFL. I don't know. He's been starting at BYU the last several years. But we've seen that position kind of elevate. Running backs have been great forever. Shout out Gary Campbell and every running back coach who has succeeded him. But the running back recruiting has always been there. You've had DBs kind of pop in and out, right? Back in the day, Walter Thurman had a great NFL career. Cliff Harris was a baller, of course. You've had some linebackers come and go. Like, that hasn't been the most prolific position per se. But all of a sudden, you've even had some really good tight ends over the years, going back to Ed Dixon. All of a sudden, Oregon is becoming the wide receiver hub out west that is on par or even surpassing USC. I mean, they flipped a kid from USC this past year. I mean, go back to, I mentioned DeAnthony Thomas earlier. That's someone who USC really wanted. And that was a big deal because it was like, wait, this kid from LA is going to come up and play for Oregon instead of going to USC. And he's a 5-star and he's good. And he lived up to the hype every single ounce of it throughout his entire career. And I think Dakorien Moore is that same sort of guy. But the way that Junior Adams is recruiting this position and where he was previously, he came down from Washington. We know what that receiving core was like. And he's, of course, got Cooper Kupp on his resume. That guy's pretty good. You talk about a mold for Dakorien Moore, by the way, Cooper Kupp, another good comparison there. His profile is only going to keep getting higher as Oregon keeps recruiting at a level that they've never been. Now, I do think it is notable because Oregon had been recruiting well, not Dallas Wilson and Dakorien Moore and Gatlin Bear well, because those are all commitments that have come here in calendar year 2024. And Bear is, of course, going to arrive in 2026. Just think about this world for a moment. This is going to be a really, really quick sidebar. It never is with me, but I'll pretend that it will be this time. You have a 2026 receiving core that is Dallas Wilson, it is Dakorien Moore, it is Jeremiah McLaughlin, and it has Gatlin Bear in it with Jerion Dickey. That would be, 4 5-stars and a highly rated 4-star flip from Ohio State. Ryan Pelham could be in the mix, the flip from USC. That is not something that you had 10 years ago when Oregon was bursting onto the scene in 15 years ago into national prominence with Chip Kelly. That has just been a Junior Adams masterclass on recruiting, development, and branding. So we outside, as they say. That's been their mantra. Well, Junior Adams is outside the home of every receiver recruit he wants, apparently, knocking on doors and saying, hey, why don't you come play for me? So I think his stock has certainly risen because of the way he's recruiting. And it is notable that Dan Lanning went out and hired Will Stein and did not promote Junior Adams the first time. Does that mean he would pass over Junior Adams the next time? Might come down to the priorities that Junior Adams has and also what Dan Lanning thinks. If he doesn't believe that Junior Adams is the best choice to be Oregon's offensive coordinator, and Adams gets that opportunity elsewhere, which he might on his recruiting prowess alone, which I'll touch on in a moment, then yeah, Lanning will let him walk. He'll go and, I'm sure, try to give him a bigger salary and get him to stay and convince him. But ultimately, he might have to choose between making someone his OC who he passed over once before, and I think whatever that reason was, there was a reason for it, or you keep a guy who is an elite recruiter and a great developer of talent, which has been proven at every stop he's ever been. That's Dan Lanning's call. That's part of being a head coach in college football. Part of being the CEO of the program is you make those sorts of decisions. You get paid the big bucks to get it right. Whether or not Adams is seen as capable of being a high-level offensive coordinator somewhere does not matter in relation to whether someone will offer them hit the offensive coordinator position. Because when you recruit like he does, that matters a lot. Perfect example is Marcus Arroyo. Arroyo, I think all of us would agree, he's the offensive coordinator down with Dillingham at Arizona State, for those who did not know. He, while at Oregon, was known as a really good recruiter. He was at a program that was winning at a high level. Did any of us, or really the football community writ large, see him as a schematic mastermind? Was the play calling clever, smart, explosive, innovative? Nope, not the way we describe those offenses at all. And yet, he got the UNLV head coaching job. He was able to find a bigger opportunity. Why? Because he could really recruit. And Junior Adams is making a big name for himself. So I don't know if he has a future as the OC at Oregon, but if you keep bringing in players like this, someone is going to say, I will give you more money and a bigger role if they're not going to make you the OC, if you can bring those sorts of guys over to my school over here. He's just doing a magnificent job right now. And I think Oregon is very lucky to have him, and I hope they're able to keep him around for a long time. Whether or not they'll be able to, that's going to be mildly challenging here. Before we get to our last segment of the day, I wanted to play a clip from our guy Brian Smith talking to Oregon 2025 offensive line commit Zaire Addison, sharing his thoughts about his commitment to Oregon. Here's what that sounds like.
All right, here with Zaire Addison, recent Ducks commit. Obviously got the shirt on. Biggest reason for picking Oregon would be?
It will be the coach. It'll be the coaching staff and where they're going. I believe what Coach Lanning is building, and I want to compete for a national championship and compete for a star spot my sophomore year. And I believe that's what Oregon can do for me. It's very family oriented. They've been recruiting me since I was sophomore. They really believed in me from the jump since I ran track. And when a lot of people really didn't see the upside I had, and now I'm 6'5", 290 pounds, best tackle in the country, and they recruited me like I'm still a sophomore. They didn't change at all through the recruiting process. And Coach Terry, I'm going to give a shout out to Coach Terry. Having 5 brand new starters, and we can have top 5 for the country, moving to the Big Ten with more weapons. I believe they're going to win the national championship in the next upcoming years, and I want to be part of that. I'm looking forward to be playing with Dante Moore, a five-star quarterback. That's going to be a draft pick. So there's going to be draft picks all around me, and you know I'm a dog. I'm going to compete for whatever's next. I'm going to be the best. You're going to get an Outlet Trophy winner. You're going to be the best. You're going to get one of the best to ever come out of Oregon.
What was the visit like? Explain to somebody who's never been to Eugene, what is the campus like in your opinion?
It's beautiful. The campus is beautiful. They got the glitz and glamour, but I was really looking for it. I was really trying to get to meet some both things of the coaching staff, how family-oriented it is, and can I fit the locker room presence and all that type of stuff. And then, I fell in love with school my first 2 visits, but I feel like I wanted my whole family to get the whole feel of it. You know what I'm saying? So once I got my dad and my baby sister up there, and once they saw what I saw, I just committed on the spot.
I love the mentality he's got. I mean, 24/7 might not rank him as the best offensive. He's a blue chip prospect and a highly rated guy, but saying to himself, "I want to compete for a starting spot as a freshman or a sophomore because I'm one of the best tackles in the country." I love hearing that sort of stuff. So, shout out to Brian for giving us that clip. The next segment is, frankly, not one I'm excited about because it's about a very sad piece of news, and I wish I didn't have to do it, but it'd be wrong to not do it. So I'll do my best to pay tribute to Khyree Jackson. Coming up next. I remember a lot of different specific moments, like where I was when, I heard this, when I found out that. And this was one of those moments. For those who are not aware, tragically, over the weekend, there was a car accident involving a drunk driver, and Oregon cornerback and recent Minnesota Vikings fourth-round selection Khyree Jackson was hit by the drunk driver and killed. And I got into this business of broadcasting because I love sports, because I love the idea of being around that for a job, and I do love it. And I never thought really hard about what I do in a situation like this. How do I talk about anything as tragic and just saddening as what we all read over the weekend? And I remember one time I was exchanging emails with Neil Everett about I think it was when Kobe Bryant died, and he was on the air and he was having to cover it, and I asked him, because I was starting to get in that field, and I wondered, like, oh my gosh, what if I have to cover something like that one day? And unfortunately, I've done that twice now in the last couple of years hosting this show. There was Spencer Webb, and now there's Khyree Jackson. And look, all of us as Oregon fans, of course, we're saddened because we enjoyed watching him, and he poured his heart and soul into his career, which I'll touch on in a moment, and into Oregon, and we wanted to watch him go on because it fills you with pride as an Oregon fan when you root for somebody, you support somebody, and then they go on to have a successful pro career that he was just robbed of in the most senseless, horrible way possible. And when you feel that, you feel. I mean, I felt what all of you felt. Like, I read the news, and I mean, my heart dropped out of my stomach. I just sat there on the couch thinking that can't happen. And as sad as it all is for us, when the loss that the football community feels and what the Vikings are feeling and everything, like, that's somebody's son who just had his entire life taken from him. And for those who don't know, John Canzano wrote a nice piece about him, and he pointed out that this is not a guy who, on the surface with his playing career and where he was going, he shouldn't have made it to the NFL. How many guys that don't just start at junior college, but go to multiple, trying to find the right spot? How many of those guys hear their names called on the day of the NFL draft? I mean, yeah, it just sucks. Yeah, it sucks. My condolences to his friends, his family, his teammates, who watched him become this great player. And multiple years at JUCO, time at Bama, came to Oregon, and he made himself into something that so few guys are able to do when they start out at that level. But I think that speaks to the character that he had and the way that he viewed football and the way he talked about football. He always came off to me when watching his interviews. I didn't have the chance to interview him ever, but he always came off as somebody who loved the game, but somebody who appreciated what the game could do for him. And I shared this sentiment when the Pac-12 blew up, and why it bothered me, and it's the same. Like, this is just a foundational principle of mine, because it's what my parents taught me, that my life is going to be a reflection of my choices and what I choose to do. And so when I see people or organizations that are making the right choices, that are making good choices in life, that are choosing to be good people, to work hard, to not complain, to overcome whatever obstacle you may have, and then they're on this incredible path and that is robbed, it just, it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. And I mean, I just felt heartbroken, sad, frustrated, angry, all of those things, because this is a guy that, I mean, just look at his season last year. I think his season reflected what he brought as a football player and what I'm then to assume he brought as a person outside of football. And that's someone who just wanted to work, just wanted to get better, to be the best version of himself. He was struggling with penalties early in the year. And then by the end of the year, he wasn't, because I think that's the kind of guy he was, that just wanted to show up and work. I mean, so many guys, if they had to go from one JUCO to another school, they might say, you know what, this might just not be for me. And that wasn't him. That wasn't him. And yeah, it sucks. It was really, really sad. And, you know, it was tough to see all the posts from his teammates who had, you know, seen him become this great player, an awesome person. And like, his story was so good. And he was just, I don't know everything about his background, his upbringing or anything. You know, Kenzana wrote that his mom was crying when he got his name called. What mother wouldn't? I mean, it's just such an awesome thing. And he'd already accomplished so much in his life. And yet somehow he still had it all ahead of him. And to see that opportunity to watch somebody grow into that sort of player, that sort of person, taken away, I can't make sense of that. I can't make sense of that because there is no sense to it. There is nothing but just sadness and frustration. I think that happened to somebody who just seemed like he loved football and he was enjoying life and he loved his teammates and his family, and yeah, that was a tough one. That was a tough one, and it always will be. It'll always be tough. When I think about Spencer Webb, I feel the same way, because there's a guy who also had a lot of obstacles in life, and yeah, I don't know how to make sense of that. So I'm sorry to get you out of here on a bummer note, but you know, I think part of this arrangement that you watch or listen to the show for my everydayers out there is we go through the highs and lows together, whether that's on the field, off the field. I don't know how I'd respond if that happened to somebody that I know, but my condolences to his family, and if by some chance they're listening to or watching this, I just hope you know that everybody in this Oregon community is behind you, and we loved having Khyree at Oregon. We loved watching him play. He was just a heck of a player. Rest easy, Khyree. Appreciate everyone listening. See you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.